Oh, hey there! Didn't see you stand there. I'm just kidding. This classic intros. Do those ever really work? I mean, it's kind of kooky. You've seen it a million times. I've seen it a million times. I don't know. I just like to poke fun at it. Anyways, you're probably wondering what we're doing under the hood of my truck. This is a 2001 Ford F150, and my alternator has decided that it wants to overcharge my battery, which is not good. According to my Edge CS tuner, it says I'm charging at about 15.2 volts, and it fluctuates between there. I've seen it spike almost to 16, and I've seen it drop down to 13 something or other, which nominal is typically around 4 volts, which that means that it's overcharging the battery. If you overcharge the battery, that could cause it to what's called pop, or it's kind of the term that I've heard, and that's pretty much where you overcharge the cells, and it will actually expand the battery, and it can pop it, which means whatever gel is in there or whatever liquid's in there, it'll just spew everywhere, and you essentially have a dead battery plus a bunch of battery acid all over your engine compartment. So, thankfully it's overcharging it, not undercharging it, and I didn't have issues getting to and from work, but I'm going to show you how to replace it in your 97 to 2003 Ford F-150. This truck is equipped with the 5.4 liter. It's a 330 cubic inch engine. It's gas, nothing super fancy. However, currently I've got a bigger alternator. It's about a 250 amp. The ones that you'll find at O'Reilly's, they vary from like 95, 115, and 130, which I'm going to put a 130 in it. I'll show you that when we get to it. A few of the tools that you'll need is, this is a quarter inch ratchet. I've got a super long extension that goes down to a 10 millimeter socket. This socket goes to the top of the alternator, where you have a positive cable that comes directly from the battery. Now, speaking of the battery, it is ideal to go ahead and disconnect your battery. In this case, I've got a handy dandy quick disconnect. That was for when I was not daily driving this. I would shut it off, kill all power to the truck so it wouldn't drain any, and then I'd actually hook it up to a trickle charger just to make sure that if I didn't drive it for a week or a month, that my battery would be maintained and it'd be fine and it'd start up just fine. So once you disconnect that, typically it's a 10 millimeter nut, and then you've got one here. So you disconnect that. Sometimes I'll let it sit just a little bit, kind of, I don't know, drain the voltage. That's just something I like to do, just let it sit, just to make sure that it's completely dead. So once you have that, now I'm using a quarter inch. I need the long extension because that bolt is actually on the top. The intake's kind of in the way, and I really don't feel like taking that off, so I'm just going to use just a long extension. That'd be fine. The bolts on the front of the engine that the alternator actually connects to are two 10 millimeter bolts. So I've just got my 3/8 with a 10 millimeter socket. Another item that you'll need is this. This is a handy dandy, they call this an idle pulley tension wrench, I guess. You can use a breaker bar that has a 3/8 square on the end of it, like you would connect to a socket. I've decided to get one of these, which thankfully O'Reilly's rents these. And I decided to get this over a breaker bar because a breaker bar, the stud that connects to sockets, that can pivot. And the last time I did this, I actually broke, with this, I broke the tensioner pulley bracket, which is not good. I think it wasn't exactly perpendicular, and it just snapped it right off. So this, I shouldn't have that issue. Thankfully, you can kind of skip a few steps. You can kind of move them around, but essentially what you want to do is you want to use your pulley tensioner and release the tension off of the pulleys. So you'll take this, you'll go opposite of tightening the belt, and you'll pull the belt off of the pulley on the alternator. After that, you'll use your 10 millimeter socket to disconnect the power wire on the alternator itself. And if you can, you'll disconnect any of the wires that are plugged into it. There should be two held in by simple clips. You just pull them up and you remove it. and then you'll have the 2 sockets holding on the alternator. So let's go ahead and take it out. Little did I know, this truck actually uses, I guess this is a 3/4 inch square socket thingamajig. Thankfully, it's got a little indexing mark, so on the one that I originally showed you, you can just stick this on here, and that'll just snap into the pulley itself. Once you get the belt off of the alternator, I'm just going to let it droop, and what's under it is the water pump. So I'm just going to let it sit. I'm not going to take it completely off. It is a good idea to inspect the belt to make sure there's no tear, there's no abnormal wear and tear on it. If there is, it's probably a good time to get it replaced. And it's pretty cheap insurance just to get a new belt on it. In this case, my belt looks just fine. It's only a few years old, so I shouldn't have any issues with it. Now I've got all the bolts out, and I actually lied. There is a 3rd short little bolt, as you can see here. This is actually on the back side of the alternator. Pretty simple. It's also a 10mm. It is short, so watch out for that. Now it's time to get it out. And you're probably wondering, how do you get out? What's the best way to get out? Well, I don't know. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to wrestle around, see if there's an easy way to get it out. You've got a giant radiator hose here on top. I really don't want to disconnect that because I have no way to capture the coolant that comes out of it. But I'm just going to try and bend that gently out of the way and see if I can just pull this thing out. Oh, right, and there it is, finally. The best way that I found to take it out is there's this little bracket. This is bolted to the front of the engine on the passenger side. This is actually just supporting the radiator hose, the upper radiator hose. So once you move that, then you can move the radiator hose just far enough forward that this will slip right on out. As you can see, I now have 2 alternators. This is the new one, this is the old one. It is nice and toasty, which is kind of interesting. However, okay, this new one, it's an Ultima brand, which is, I think that's probably an O'Reilly's house special. It's got an 8-rib pulley, and it's an 130 amp, which is the highest that they had. I went with the highest just to ensure that I wouldn't ever have any electrical issues with this with not enough current. Sometimes, if you have aftermarket speakers, subwoofers, all that, that all draws extra current off of your battery. So, this shouldn't have an issue with it. One thing you do want to make sure is that they are similar in size, and all of the bolt holes are approximately in the same location. You can just use your eye on it. You do want to make sure that the pulley spins nice and freely. You can hear the internals. It should spin, sorry for that. They should spin freely, which this one has some squeak in it. But the brand new one sounds good. Something else you want to check is how many ribs are on the pulley itself. You want to make sure those are the same that you're replacing with. I have gotten one that's a 6-rib, which was a no-go. I actually had to switch the pulleys out. I have confirmed that this is an 8-rib pulley, and on the original one, it too is an 8-rib pulley. So we're good to go. Install of this is exact opposite of the way you took it out. I will note one probably good thing to do is to make sure that all of your connections on truck side or car side are good and they're ready to go. You've got a stud on the top. You want to make sure that those eyelets on the harness are good to go. On the back side, you'll have 2 wire harnesses that fit in here. You want to make sure that those plugs are in good condition, nothing's broke on them, and if they are broke, well, I guess your SOL, you're going to have to wire the entire truck, which don't come to me because I'm not doing that. However, I was pretty careful when removing it. I used a flathead screwdriver, something like this, just a little guy. This is all you need just to help get you under that plug, and then you can remove it pretty easily. All right, and that about finishes the install. Just finished tightening up that top bolt. It's easiest to get from the top. You're probably wondering, dude, you just had a full suit on. Yeah, I got hot and sweaty because that's insulated. And doing it here in my garage, I don't have heat or anything like that, but you're out of the cold, you're out of the rain, or in my case, it's 34 degrees outside. But it's not too bad in here, and I mean, you really work up a sweat And it does help that I have just got this home from work, which work is a good 45 minutes north of here. So the engine got fully up to temp. Everything got nicely heat soaked. And with that, that closes this install of a brand new alternator on this is a 2001 Ford F150. Oh, and I forgot, you'll need to reconnect your battery again. Don't forget to do that. Be sure all of your connections there are nice and tight. Make sure your pulley's on where it should be within the ribs. Now it's on. All you have left to do is to start it up and make sure it works. I just confirmed it is working properly. Currently, it's idling at, I don't know, about 14.5, 14.6. That should be perfectly fine. If it's back up to 15, that's too much. But I'm pretty happy with this. Now, I've got some tools to return, thankfully. Thanks for watching, and hopefully this was kind of helpful. Be sure to like and subscribe. That's a thing that everybody's doing. So go ahead, and I'll see you on the next time. On the next time? What is it? See you next time. See you in the next video. Well, I won't see you, but I'll essentially, you'll watch my next video, I hope, because you subscribed, which would be really nice. Which, now I gotta clean up. Oops. Oh, crap. So far, no bloody knuckles. Got plenty filthy, but it's not bad. This is pretty easy. I didn't break anything. That's pretty good for me.